One of the things that I've been thinking about, and obviously has been an important study for me back when I studied psychology in graduate school, was the concept of memory, just the ordinary aspect of memory. And as I get older, I'm trying to find ways to strengthen my own memory. And one of the things that I've recently begun to think about is if I could establish a basis of memory to where I pull things into my active memory that ordinarily would just be triggered by an event, then it may expand my use of memory. Who knows? So let me illustrate what I'm talking about. At being beyond 85 years old, I'm going to use each 5 years as kind of an anchor point to establish my memory or my operating memory. And so beginning with 1935 and then 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, I would have an anchor point, an anchor memory, and then from that, if you imagine the anchor memory being the center of a hub, and then the events surrounding that memory would be like the spokes of a hub, say 12 spokes going out, and then the perimeter of that memory being the economic climate or the political climate of that particular period. And so, for example, if I were to choose a primary memory from 1935, for me, it would be our move to Old Jefferson, Tennessee. My dad had been working at construction and got an injury in his leg. And so we moved to the country to both economize and for him to recuperate. And we had a garden and chickens and pigs and all that. And so Old Jefferson would be the focal point, the hub of the memory. And then the people and the surroundings of Old Jefferson would be the spokes of the hub, of the wheel. And then the rim of the wheel would be the Great Depression. And so, for example, in Old Jefferson, there were probably 15 or 20 families, but right in the heart of the community, we lived across the street from the Wallers, and he drove a school bus at the time, and his son, Robert Sidney, was the song leader at church there at the Church of Christ. And then next door to the building was a lady named Darlene Wade. And then next door to her was a relative of hers named Wade. And then beyond them was the man that owned the farm where we lived later, and his name was Ben Ward. His daughter was Catherine Ward, who was the third grade teacher. And his son was Hatton Ward, who was the gentleman that my brother worked for on the farm. Across the street was where the Hunters lived, and Mr. Hunter, Buford Hunter, had gone to prison for probably stealing an animal or stealing food or something. He'd gone to jail at that time. And then next door to him was Clifton Mann, who worked at the stockyard in Nashville. And then across from Mann was the Sam Hall's Grocery. It was a general store where people kind of congregated as well as bought items. And a guy named Johnny Hayes ran the store for Sam Hall. And then next door is where Sam Hall and his wife lived when they were in the country. He was a real estate investor in Nashville and only came to Old Jefferson kind of on the weekends. Next door to that were the Farrells, and they were from New England, they were kind of an odd family to be living in Old Jefferson. And they had two daughters. One was Brinsley and one was Patricia. They were just a very fashionable family, even drove an Essex automobile back in 1936. And then next door to that was the Joneses, where we lived. And then down the way was the Smiths. Peyton Smith owned the local grocery store on further towards Smyrna. And he and his wife and their daughter Nell and younger daughter Mary Alice lived there. And so later we lived next door to them on Ben Ward's farm where we built a house out of used lumber and were able to live in it for 5 years until World War II started. So what I will try to do is use reference points at each 5 years, and then by knowing who these characters are, then each of them kind of take on a life of their own. Like I could tell you a story about any one of these people that I just mentioned in Old Jefferson. Thank you.